I want to talk to you about a lie this morning. The lie I want to talk to you about, you heard a long, and in some cases with you, long time ago. And it goes like this. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but... And there's the lie, right? I mean, sticks and stones definitely will break your bones. Don't get me wrong on that. Don't go out this afternoon and try it. But that latter part, and words will never hurt me, is a flat out lie. Words are powerful, aren't they? I mean, how many of us walk through life with this phrase that keeps playing over in our mind because somebody told us, oh, you'll never mount up to anything, or oh, you're just stupid, or oh, you're just ugly, or blah, 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 whatever it is. And those words have shaped us. You know, I worked at a troubled kids group home for a while, and we had a young man that his dad told him he would never mount up to anything. And in spite of that, he'd begun to make something of himself, and he couldn't handle that, so he attacked one of the staff so that he would prove his dad right. I mean, words are powerful, but we forget that. We really do. I mean, in an age of hyperbole, y'all know what hyperbole is, right? Exaggeration. He is the greatest football player to have ever played the game. Until the next guy comes along, you know? I love listening to sporting events, and they'll come up with these statistics because they have this guy named Ed they lock in a trailer and say, your job is to do nothing but come up with statistics. And so the guy will say, that's the longest run from scrimmage on the month with a vowel in it. What is that? I mean, that's hyperbole. It seems like everywhere you turn around, you know, people are saying that this is the most phenomenal or the most devastating. And we're just making it so that we think words don't matter anymore. But words do matter. They have power. So maybe we ought to pay attention to words. I want you to pay attention to really two words, but one word in particular this morning in our passage. Now, I don't normally take a large passage. Normally, you know I believe in the power of words, so I usually take small passages. But I've taken a rather lengthy passage, and I've done that intentionally to demonstrate my point. In the 10th chapter of the book of Matthew, Jesus is talking to his disciples. Now, I need to kind of set the stage for you. This is about the second year of Jesus' ministry. Okay? He's called his disciples. His disciples have spent time with him. They've done a lot of things, and they've gotten into like about the second year of his ministry. And Jesus does something interesting. It says in verse 1 that he summoned his 12 disciples to him. It says there that he gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out, and to heal every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these. The first, Simon. We all know Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, and James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, and Philip and Bartholomew and Thomas and Matthew the tax collector. How'd you like to have that one? Oh, you're Jim, the guy from the IRS, you know? James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, and Judas Iscariot, this is even worse, the one who betrayed him. So it says here that about this point in his ministry, he pulls together his disciples, and then it gives us a list of them, and he commissions them. He gets ready to send them out. And the rest of the passage there through verse 18 kind of talks about his commissioning to him. It says there, these 12 Jesus sent out after instructing them, do not go in the way of the Gentile, do not enter any city of the Samaritans, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the leper, cast out demons. Freely you receive, freely give. Do not acquire gold or silver or copper for your money belts, or bags for your journey, or even 2 coats or sandals or a staff. For the worker is worthy of his support. And whatever city or village you enter, inquire who is worthy in it, and stay at his house until you leave that city. As you enter the house, give it your greeting. If the house is worthy, give it your blessing of peace. But if it is not worthy, take back your blessing of peace. Whoever does not receive you, nor heed your word as you go out into that house or that city, shake the dust off your feet. How many remember reading that? Yeah, you all know that one, because that's the revenge part. You've been unfriendly to me. Okay? Truly I say to you, it would be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. Those are a lot of words, right? But I think there are 2 words in there that are powerful. And it has really nothing to do with the largest part of that passage. I mean, that we look at that and we go, well, Jesus talked a lot about this authority and casting out demons and healing the sick and greeting people and all of that stuff. But by the time you get to that, you've missed really what's important about this passage. By the time you get to the doing, which is what we really focus on, a preacher would get this and say, y'all need to go attack your world, and you need to do this, and time you get to that, you've missed the really important stuff. I want you to take a look at the first 5 words. First 5 words. Jesus summoned his 12 disciples. First 5 words. Nothing else matters, if you don't focus on that. Because in those first 5 words, a mouthful has been said. And if you take away those first 5 words, you make it all about some task. But in those first 5 words, something more important is told us. Why don't you take a look at 2 words? His. These guys were about to be turned loose on the world. Right? They were about to go out into the city. They were given authority. They were to go out to the lost sheep. All these things, they've been given a pretty large task. But when Matthew records that Jesus pulled his 12 disciples to his side, he's telling us that these people weren't given a task. He's telling us about who these people were that were doing the task. They were his. When you look at that list of things that is laid out there, do you see Jesus in that? Do you see Jesus going out and healing the sick and raising the dead? Do you see Jesus going in and greeting people and staying with them? Do you see Jesus going to the lost sheep of Israel? Well, that's what he's asking them to do, is to be him. And you can't be him unless at first you belong to him. His. Identity always precedes purpose. A task does not matter if you have no authority to do it. Think about that for a minute. You're laying in the hospital room, Ron, and in walks a man who says, I've looked at your chart and we need to do an angiogram and we need to put a stent in. And Ron's going, great, fantastic, marvelous. And in walks the nurse and says, Mr. Janitor, what are you doing in here? It's all plumbing, And so Ron says, I have a question. Identity matters before purpose. These guys were not just told to go out and do some job. These guys were told to go out and announce, it says there in where am I? There you go, verse 7. Announce to them that the kingdom of the heavens is at hand. Now you remember we talked about last week how that Jesus had received the baton from John, and Jesus passed the baton to us about the redemptive work of God in bringing man to Him. So He's telling them, guys, you're going to go out after a year of living with me, you're going to go out and replicate what I've done. But you can't do that if you know me. You can't. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be a follower of Jesus to talk about God, because you don't. I'm not saying that you have to be a follower of God to read the Bible, because you don't. I'm not saying that you have to be a follower of God to preach even, or to sing, or to teach Sunday school, or to do any of those things, because evidence far and away testifies to the fact that people who don't know God do those things. But you do have to belong to Him to convey Him. You do have to belong to Him to share with them of the experience of God. A friend of mine told me one time, he said, you teach what you know, but you replicate who you are. And Jesus is saying, guys, I want you to be me to them. Remember in the latter part of the Gospels, right before Jesus is crucified, He says to them, the things that I've done, you'll do. This is what He's preparing them for. He's saying, I want you to be me to them, but you can't be me to them if you don't know me, if you don't belong to me. There's a story in Acts chapter 8 about a guy by the name of Simon who saw the work of the Holy Spirit and tried to buy it. And I want you to listen to what Peter said to him. He says, you have no part or portion in this matter, for your heart is not right before God. You don't belong to Him. You're not right with Him. We've got to start with that simple fact, do I know Him? Am I His? Before we go anywhere. Before I say anything about, well, I go to church. Yeah, I read my Bible. I'm a good person. I give to the poor. I help the needy. All good things. The only problem is that Jesus reminds us that in the last days, some are going to come to Him and say, didn't I do these things? And what's going to be His response? I don't know you. A relationship with God is not what you do. A relationship with God is who you are. Are you His? And Matthew tells us that these 12 were His. He called them to His side. Actually, it tells us that these 12 He called to His side were what? His disciples. But I want you to take a look down a little bit further to verse 2. And I want you to see there it says, now the name of the 12 apostles were. If you ever want to listen to the 12 apostles, except for poor Thaddeus. Okay, no Thaddeus is there. Who is it? Bartholomew? No, Bartholomew's there. Who's the guy that took Judas's place? Who? Who? Matthias. See? I'd have to look in Acts to figure it out. There it calls them apostles, and we usually know them as apostles. I call them 12 wise guys, okay? But it says they were disciples. Let me explain a little difference to you. These guys are apostles. Do you know what apostle means? It means one who's sent out. In verse 2, they're called the 12 who were sent out because He was sending them out. And we have taken to calling these 12 guys the apostles. All right? And I'm not saying that's wrong. But before they were apostles, they were disciples. So let's talk about what a disciple is. That's the word that I really want you to listen to this morning. A disciple. It says that Jesus called His 12 disciples to His side. Now, disciple's not really a word we use today. We have substituted other words for it. We have substituted journeyman, acolyte, follower, student, pupil, any of that concept, mentee to mentor, that idea of one who comes alongside and unites himself with another person to not just learn something, but to learn something from someone. We send people to school and they experience a multitude of disciplines from a multitude of professors. But in history, oftentimes, and still in unions today, you will see the case of an individual attaching himself to another individual and learning from the master what it means to do that task. That's the idea of a disciple. These guys have spent at least a year living with Jesus. Not just meeting him, once in a while. Not just going to class on Thursday and Tuesday. But to be intimate with him, to see him continually, to travel with him, to learn from him, but also about him. That was essential before they went out. Because they weren't going out doing, like revival meetings. They were going out replicating Christ. They were going out as an extension of him. So they needed to know who he was. So they sat at Jesus' feet. As pupils at Jesus' feet, they experienced and they learned what the kingdom of the heavens is like. They saw firsthand with Jesus what it meant to be a citizen of the kingdom of the heavens. As apprentices, interacting daily with Jesus, as he healed the sick, as he struggled with issues in his life, as he resisted the Pharisees, they saw what it meant to be a follower of God. As adherents of his, they learned what it meant to bring their life to a point where it looked like Jesus. Now, did they do it perfectly? Did they do it some days better than others? Yeah. But as his disciples, it was a daily interactive experience. There's a wonderful passage out of the Old Testament that says, where the oxen is, there is dung. Okay? Think about it. Think about it for a minute. If you want an oxen and you don't want to have to clean up after it, you have two choices. A dead oxen or a fake oxen. Either way, they don't do a lot of work. But your barn looks great. If you have a live oxen, you have a mess. Right? I've never owned an oxen, so if you ever have, please, confirm or deny this for me. Well, being a follower of Jesus is messy. Because we all, like oxen, have gone astray. To twist a Bible passage. We don't always get it right. We don't always do it right. We aren't always right. But it's a work in progress, and sometimes it gets messy. Sometimes we stand up and we proclaim our deep devotion to God, and then turn around and deny him 3 times, right? But these guys were learning. They were learning. They were disciples. Jesus says, all right, you guys, you belong to me. You've been learning from me what it means to live in the kingdom of God. And now go. Go and share that with other people. But that going would not have mattered had they not belonged to him, had they not been learning about him. Church has done such a disservice to you. We have made church about something other than being a disciple. We've made church about something other than belonging to God. We've made it about belonging to a church. We've made it about doing whatever our particular theological bent is, whether you're Presbyterian or Baptist or whatever. Are you a good Baptist? Are you a good Presbyterian? We've gotten away from the idea of belonging to Him and being a disciple. But you know what? God's heart is that I call people to myself, that they might learn of me, be my disciples. Remember that great statement that Jesus made? Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Learn of me, for I am meek and lowly of heart, and my yoke is easy. Come to me. He doesn't say come to my church. He says come to me. Well, how can He come to you? Jesus is in heaven, right? Well, yeah. But His followers, His church, is here. Do they find Him in us? Are we learning of Him? Are we experiencing Him daily? Daily. Learning from Him and inflicting that at times upon the world. But learning from Him and living that reality to the world. It breaks my heart. I talked to a lady just this week who was sharing with me an issue that she was struggling with. And I told her, I said, you know what? Part of the problem is that we have become very adept at creating church people. We haven't been faithful to making disciples. Christianity is a discipleship relationship with God, wherein we enter into that relationship and we are transformed in the mental, the physical, and the spiritual aspects of who we are so that we become like Jesus to the world. That is, if you belong to Him. You can't be transformed if you don't belong to Him.